Want to welcome everyone today to Feel the Beat with DJB live here on Just TV. Have an in-studio guest today. I want to thank her for coming in, Geraldine LaRue from Teamworks. Appreciate you coming in today and taking time out of your schedule to do that. Once the program is over, we'll continue with the movie that was playing. But right now, we invite you to tune in and listen to some of the great things that she has to say about resumes, interviews, that type of thing, and selling ourselves on the job, because that's really, really important to do. We need to be able to sell ourselves. That's what we're doing, is selling ourselves so that employer will hire us. So Geraldine,
Yes.
thanks for coming in. Appreciate it very
you're
much.
more than welcome, Brent.
So, working with Teamworks and stuff, you get to see a lot of demographics of people, different age groups and that coming in.
Right.
Is there a harder group to get to work or put to work than others, you might say?
Well, probably most listeners will know, like, when you're first starting off with employment and you don't have any experience, that is a difficult age. So those students right out of school with very little experience, it's really good if you can do some work even while you're in high school, let's say, so that you can get a bit of experience, just, if it's just labor jobs, whatever. Get something where you can have a reference. And then the group that's about 50 and up, we hear that term ageism happening within the society now, and just not necessarily having employers taking a chance on someone that's a little bit older. So that group sometimes struggles a little bit, but it can also just be about how you're presenting yourself.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Teamworks does, it helps to tweak a resume for us. A resume is vital, isn't it? Why is that so important?
So your resume is basically what's going to get your name into the employer. We have other areas too, like networking, huge, to be able to get out and network. But when you're applying for a job, you've got to have, just about every employer is asking for a resume. Some want it in different ways. They want it put in electronically. Some want it dropped off at their business. Some, may say just give us a cover letter. But almost, I would say 99% of employers are wanting a resume. They want to be able to screen their participants or their candidates prior to setting aside the amount of time they need for interviews.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any specific things that we should or should not put on our resumes when we're making them?
Right. So it depends on where you're applying and your areas. So in Southern Alberta here, employers tend to really like longevity at work. So they want to see that you've held positions for a longer length of time. But as you age, then you're trying to play that game. Well, how do I show all that? How do I show that I've had, 10 or 15 employers over my lifetime? So you're trying to then categorize things. So you want to have, on your resume, you want to have your general information, which would be your name, contact information, which now is just getting to be an email address and a cell phone number, or a phone number that you're going to pick up a message from very quickly. Not so much an address anymore. That's sort of,
really?
A lot of people are leaving their addresses out because nobody's generally going to be responding to that address, right? And only if you get hired do you need to put the address on for, your employer's benefits sort of things.
Oh, wow.
So that's a bit of a change. Most resumes now are coming in with some sort of objective or goal for employment. So that should change for every resume that you're sending out for every job applicant. So it's tweaking your resume every time you send it out. And then you want to have a skills section. So what we see a lot of people have then mostly is their work history.
Mm-hmm.
But a work history just says the tasks you've done. It doesn't really say the skills you have. So let's clarify that. So I can answer the phone. That's a task, answering the phone.
Okay,
but the skill could be single or multiple line phones. So maybe you have a 4 or 5 line phone system coming in. Well, now I'm able to do that as well. It's not just answering the phone. Can efficiently and accurately handle the multiple line telephone system. Do you see what I'm saying? Like a simple thing like answering a phone is now the skill. So, and how are you doing that? Expertly, efficiently, the adjectives need to come in there. So we really advocate having a resume that has the skills laid out. Is it customer service? Is it management? Is it leadership? What are the skills? It could be basic things like hand and power tools, right?
Mhm.
It could be things like QuickBooks, or like being able to have worked in those
Right.
industries with accounting. So what are the skills? I can invoice, I can do payroll, I can do receivables and payables and all of that. So laying out the skills that you can do, and then having your work history. So some people now are having their work history just the employer and the date and the title.
Okay. Okay.
So there's no I did this, I did this, I did this, because that should all be in your skills section now.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
So highlight of qualifications or skills, and then you would subsection that out into different areas. So there's a really good book here that the Alberta government produces called Advanced Techniques in Work Search. This is free to any Albertan. If they go to, for our office, for example, or Alberta Works or any of those places, and they outline right from the beginning how to do your work search. So one of the things is that there are generally 3 types of resumes. So there's a chronological, which is just work history.
Mm-hmm.
There is a functional, which has no work history in it at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then there's the combination where it's work history. So I'm not sure your camera can pick this up, but we have our highlights of qualifications, and then they have put a couple of points under the work history, sort of what they've done. But depending on how robust this highlights
Yeah.
of qualifications or the skills section is, depends on whether or not you can leave some of this out. Right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, and then of course your references available
Mhm.
upon request. I would say always bring those with you in an interview as well. And your education. So, for the most part, you're probably not going to be applying if the job says you must have a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to,
Right.
so the education piece has got to be there, but it's not the first thing that they're looking for, or it can be in the cover letter. It can be up front more in the cover letter. So then that information gets across very easily
Okay.
that way.
Okay. Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So which type of resume is more effective? The functional one, or the combination, or the chronological?
Right now, personally, every career counselor you go to is going to have different ways
Mhm.
that they want to see a resume. So mine is the combination.
Oh,
I like
okay.
the combination. I like we have to see the work history, right? Where have you worked? Why did you leave one job to another, right? And that's what an employer's thinking, when they're looking at resumes. Oh, gee, they stayed here for 10 years. That's great. They stayed here. They've had 5 jobs in 5 years.
Mhm.
Oh boy, I'm not sure I'm going to take a chance on that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but if you've got all the skills in there, that can still intrigue them, right? Because
Right.
maybe there's a reason. Maybe you're a venture capitalist or something, and you end up having to work for different people for short periods of time.
Mhm.
I don't know. Like
Yeah.
there's
And there's other things too that come into play. Sometimes a company, has a takeover and phases somebody
Exactly.
out, and that's beyond your control or something like
That's
that.
right. That's right.
So even though that in the resume seems like you haven't worked there that long, but there's still reasons for it, right? It's not your fault necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that that they can
That's
look
right.
at, and if they think of that, then
Mhm.
usually they'll take a chance on you if you intrigue them enough, right?
And that's all the skills.
Yeah.
The skills will be what captures an employer's eye.
Yeah.
So if you put skills sort of over on the side, and your work history is the prominent thing, well, you're reducing what really is
Mhm.
important. So you need to make sure that those skills are really clearly outlined. We advocate that every job seeker, no matter at what point in their life, begin what we call a master resume. And that could be 10, 20, 30 pages long as you work through your careers.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So every job you have, you start listing the skills that I've obtained from that job. So that when it comes time to do a resume for a new job, now you've got that information all laid out, and you can pull off of your master resume what you want in the resume for a particular job.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's new. That makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah, for sure. So, in a resume, how long should it be? Like, I know in the past I've had a resume, and I think I had 4 pages one time, and I an employer I'm sure would look at that and go, "Wow, that's a little too much reading," and probably turf it in the garbage, right? What is an ideal length for a resume?
2 pages or less.
2 pages or less.
So I find I personally find a 1 page resume tends to not give enough information. So we're talking about that 1.5 to 2 pages, depending on how well you've laid everything out.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you've, so for example, let's say you've done receptionist, okay? And you've been a receptionist, let's say at 3 different salons. Well, you can clump all of that together as one piece of work history, right? And now it helps because you can give the dates for a longer period of
Oh.
time too. So that helps for our older workers trying to reestablish
Oh,
themselves.
okay.
So they can combine work and the extended period looks a little bit longer too, right? So yeah, it can be helpful on how we pull those things together.
Okay, no, that's good to know because in the past when we've done resumes, we all have this certain idea because that's how we were taught before,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
You got to do this, this, and this, right? So getting help from professionals that do resumes is always a good thing, right? Because then they can
Yeah.
help tweak that.
And so we at Teamworks we offer that. It's called Career Services, and we have a whole list on our website of the different packages that you can purchase
Mhm.
and the help you can get. So
Okay, nice.
there's interview help, there's resume help, there's career coaching help, all of that. Whatever that is, our fee for service part of our
Oh,
business.
nice.
Yeah.
So we've often heard in the past that we put what we're interested in or whatever on the resume. I play drums or whatever. Is that a good idea? And is it also a good idea to put volunteer experience on there?
Volunteer experience is great. So also remember that if you've learned a skill in a volunteer job, that goes in the skills section. Because it doesn't matter where you got that skill, you can still do that, or you've done that proficiently, hopefully, if you're putting it in that
Mhm.
skills section, right? So having your volunteer work on there is very good, especially if you've held positions like a chair of a committee, treasurer, secretary, that shows that you would have gotten or had to use skills in that position. So for people that may not have a lot of a work experience, especially we're talking maybe the younger generation that's coming up,
Mhm.
they've probably done a lot of volunteer work too, through their churches, through clubs, through groups, whatever. So now they can put that on as skills for the resume, plus showing where they did that work, right?
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
that helps.
So it's probably also a good idea because sometimes a volunteer position might lead to a job as
Yes.
well. Right.
And volunteers and hobbies on your resume are helpful. What's nice about that is sometimes, but it should be very, very short and little. And if you have to leave anything off, leave hobbies off first and then your
Mhm.
volunteer experience. But what that does, it provides often a way to break the ice with an employer in an interview. So, oh, I see that you do play drums, right?
Mhm.
Oh, wow, that's cool. I used to play drums in high school, and then it sort of eases you into the interview a little bit more and gets you a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, it makes
So,
sense.
Yeah.
So a resume gets you the job.
No,
No. What gets you the job?
the interview.
The interview. The interview. And that's where a lot of people fail on getting the job because whether they're really nervous or they don't have clear in their mind what questions
Mhm.
the employer is going to ask, where preparation is really good to be able to anticipate what questions they're going to ask and prepare accordingly, right?
Absolutely. So interviewing is a real art and skill in itself that you need to learn. Too many people think, "Oh yeah, I can do the interview. That's not a problem." And then they get in and they all of a sudden they get nervous right before and they didn't expect it, or they're, "Oh man, that question I was just blank. I didn't know." But if you really take the time, first of all, before an interview, so let me back up. If you've gotten an interview, that means they see something in your resume
Mhm.
that they like, and they think, "Great, this is a potential candidate to work here." So if you get a constant amount of resumes and don't get the job, something's happening in your interviews. If you're not getting your resume to get you an interview, something's happening with your resume. Right?
Okay.
Like if you
Okay, that
think
makes
you've
sense,
got
yeah.
the skills and everything, then your resume should get you the interview.
Yeah, that makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
And if you're not getting the job, something's happening. Now, if you're coming second and being told, "Wow, you were just missing your boiler ticket versus, your red seal
Right,
or
right,
something," then
right.
got it, right? Then there's not much you can do.
Right.
But we've had people come through and they get like 5 or 10 interviews, but they're not getting the job.
Yeah.
So then we'll say, okay, let's video your interviews, and we'll put them in front of just a laptop and we'll video their interviews and ask them different questions. And from that, we can sort of pick out what's going right, what's going wrong, right? And sort of help tweak their interviews.
Yeah,
right?
it's a good way because a lot of people are very self-conscious about, I don't want to be videotaped, I don't want to be photographed, right?
Yeah,
But doing that, you can actually see how you come across
that's right.
and what you're saying or what you're not saying. So that's kind of
right.
important. So in an interview, are there any standard questions that employers always ask?
There's some that are most frequently asked, such as, tell us a little bit about yourself, right? Oh, boy.
That's where a lot of people fail,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
keep that information to your employment and dabble a little bit however you feel comfortable with. Yes, I live in Southern Alberta, or I live in Lethbridge, or I live just outside of Lethbridge, and maybe I'm married, I have 3 kids, so that they get a bit of a picture of you and who you are and what you're bringing, right? They don't want long stories, right? You want to be finished in probably a minute to 2 minutes at the max.
Okay.
And then just give them a quick rundown. Yeah, well, out of high school, I started working here, and then I got my degree, and I worked here. Or I got more work experience, and then I transitioned into this, and continue on just sort of giving a bit of background into, and a little bit of that you can say, so this is why I moved into this company, or whatever, was because I was trying to get more skills in HR or management or whatever. So it was a good career move.
So what are some of the questions that they ask that are specific basically to the job? Like, they might ask maybe, how do you feel you would fit, or something like that. Is that a standard one, or is there ways to prepare for questions like that where they are sort of specific, but they kind of give a little bit of vagueness there too?
Right. So what a lot of employers will do, a couple of things. An employer will say, well, what do you know about our company? Right? So do your research for every interview. So job searching is a lot more work than people think it is,
So-
right? If you're unemployed, it's full-time work looking for work.
Yeah, true. So why would they ask a question, what do you know about our company? Why would they ask that?
To find out if you even are interested enough to have looked them up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you looked them up? Do you understand? What are the values in the mission statement? What's the corporate culture of that company? And therefore, if they know you've looked into that, now you can tailor your answers to some of that. So while I noticed that I'm really interested in your company from what I've seen online, you're very family orientated, or your corporate culture really lends itself to helping the community, or I really see that you're customer service driven, right? So you get to brag a little bit about what you know about them and or their companies. You can even go so far as saying, yeah, I see that you studied in Arizona, I grew up there, or sort of whatever might be something that kind of gets you to have more of a connection with those employers that are interviewing.
Yeah, and that's important, is developing that connection. And that's kind of where you can get and feel it out, especially when you say, tell us about yourself, you can sort of develop that a bit too.
Right.
But they always ask a question, if you had a dispute with a coworker, how would you handle it? Or how would you handle a difficult situation with a customer or client?
Yes.
Why do they ask that?
So they want to see your response to stress and difficult situations. And often, so an employer could ask them exactly as you did, very straightforward like that, or they would often give you a scenario.
Okay.
So okay, let's say you're sitting at the front desk and someone comes in and they're just really upset and frustrated, and they're over, at this little mall, and the bathrooms aren't working, and how can this be, and right? And maybe you can't
Mhm.
solve it, but how are you going to do to ease that individual that's come to your front desk? How are you going to relate to them? How are you going to calm them down? What are you going to do that validates their concern and, you know, allows you to maybe, not that you can necessarily fix it, but you're listening and see if you can get them calmed down and
Mhm.
and take the information. Do you need to pass it on right away? Is this a major concern? Do you and your company should have policy and procedure, and what do you do in difficult situations, and how far do you go to being offered help and things like that. So scenario questions are happening a lot in interviews. But let me tell you about something else that's really starting to change, which is interesting, and many job seekers may not be aware of this. And this is work experience interviews. So where the employer will say, we want you to come in and work for half a day with us, just to see how you,
Mhm.
so it's a working interview.
Mhm.
So we have the sit down, sort of like we're doing now, interview like this
Mhm.
in a room, 3 or 4 people, can be multiple people. We're doing video interviews now, telephone interviews now, right? And now there's the working interview. So it can't be for all jobs because, of course, safety has to be a primary
Yeah, okay.
consideration. But let's say you wanted to work as a medical receptionist. So they could say, well, come in, you know, we're just going to see how you handle maybe the front desk. Maybe they'll say, come in and be with us for a couple of hours. Now the employer can choose to compensate you in a number of different ways if they offer to compensate at all.
Mhm.
So that's from the employer's end, they may ask. But a job seeker now could say, would it help you, or could I offer to come in and do a little bit of a working interview with you? So you can offer, and when you offer, then you shouldn't be expecting any
Mhm.
monetary gain from that.
Right.
And just say, you know, this is how it would work maybe in a dental office,
Mhm.
right? I'll just
Okay.
come in and, you know, you can see how I interact with the patients
Mhm.
and interact with the staff. So that's kind of something new that we're seeing a lot more of.
Is that like job shadowing in a way?
It's before the job
Before
shadow.
the job shadow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we got 4 people that we think are really good candidates. We're gonna do a working interview with each one of them, and then we'll pick the one we want to hire.
Okay.
Right?
Oh.
So, because some people can really shine in an interview,
Mhm.
but then you get them on the job and maybe they can't relate to people very easily, and then you want them as a customer service person, so they're talking with you really well. Oh, great person. But then they hang back and they don't, you know, so they don't go forward with, you know, being inquisitive or trying to seek to understand what's going on or being helpful, or they're not,
Uh-huh.
it's a way to get to really see somebody's more true colors that way.
Nice. You are listening live to Just TV, Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. I want to thank you very much for listening to Feel the Beat with DJB. I'm DJB, a local DJ in town here. I have a in-studio guest, Geraldine LaRue from Teamworks. We're kind of discussing resumes, interviews, and how to sell yourself at a job today. We want to invite you to download the app from iStore, iTunes. Whether you have an Android or an iPhone, you can download the app Jess FM. You can listen to the radio, watch TV wherever you are, anytime. Go onto our website, jessfm.ca. You'll be able to see all of our hosts, all of the programs. You'll be able to watch TV live on Jess TV. We've got a lot of great things coming up, a lot of great programming. We've got a lot of great hosts and guests that are on there. So click on to whatever show you want to watch. Also, we have a YouTube channel. Go onto YouTube. And as well Facebook. So various formats. You'll be able to watch us, listen to us. But make sure wherever you are, you download that app on your smartphone, Jess FM, and you'll be able to listen on your smartphone wherever you are. So we've been talking about interviews so far, and resumes. And there's something on an interview that ends up happening all the time is they always ask you about a star story. Why is that important? What is a star story?
So a star story is a situation that happened while you were employed where you sort of shone. Where did you shine? What was it about? What did you do to get the situation to work well?
Mhm.
So it could be resolving a conflict. So you would say what the conflict is very briefly, what was done about it, and what was your participation in assisting that, because it's got to be about how you've sort of gone over and above, or how you had a situation that really could show your skills and ability to handle something. So handling conflict, handling with the public, or handling conflict with an employee, or even, you know, with an employer, but that gets a little bit tricky. You have to be very careful about how you answer some of those situations. It could be about how did you how did you provide a better service to the company? Like, what did you do to bring more sales, or to improve the company in some way? What have you done to help out? So there can be multiple ways of doing that. And again, this advanced techniques for work search, they take you through how to write a star story and what a star story is.
Okay.
I would always say have 3 to 5 star stories. Every star story shouldn't go more than 2 minutes to 3
Okay.
minutes maximum.
Okay.
Right? So
And where can anybody get this book?
so this
pen?
can be obtained at our office,
Okay.
Teamworks. We're in the Lethbridge Center,
Okay.
where the bay is, and
Perfect.
we're upstairs on the 2nd floor. They can pick it up at Alberta Works also.
Okay, perfect.
A couple
Yeah.
other places in
Yeah,
town.
so that's very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Resumes and interviews and that. So pick one of these up if you're searching for a job.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
it'll help you greatly.
Yes.
So star stories are vital. So that means that we have to be prepared. So we have to
Yes.
think of them and have them really clear in our mind, right?
That's right, and we really advocate write them down, because until you write it down, you're not sure how it's going to roll off your tongue. So you need to write it down. You need to practice saying it. You know, grab somebody you know and just say, "Hey, I need to practice this answer to this interview question, and can you listen for me? And are there any tips?" You've got to get it to the point that you can't be reading off
Mhm.
of a paper in an
Yeah.
interview. So you've got to know exactly what you want to say. You've got to shrink the story small enough that you're going to remember all the parts, but have the detail in your mind that you can explain to that.
Condense it.
Yes.
So pick out the point
Yeah.
that you want to make and then condense it and go from there. Yeah.
That's right. And if you're a person that's very good orally, you've got to really then be careful that you don't make it too long.
Yeah.
And if you're not good orally, you've got to be really trying to expand. So don't make the employer do the work in the interview by, "Oh, well, how did that happen? Oh, well, what did you do? Oh, well, you know, you've got to provide the information to the employer."
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because sometimes we clam up in an interview because we're so
Yes.
nervous, and then you know there's that dead air and you're expecting, okay, what do I say now? Where does it go, right? But
That's right.
we want to remember too that it is an interview on both ends too, right?
Exactly.
Which
Good
means
point.
when
Yeah.
they ask you, do you have any questions for me? Don't just say no, right?
Exactly.
Why is it important not to say no, like to say, yes, I have questions, and what questions are good to ask?
Right. So that will slightly change with the company,
Mhm. Okay.
but at the same time, you should never leave an interview without saying something, or without asking something. So you've got to be careful, because you don't want to ask a question that you could easily find out if you had researched the company.
Uh-huh.
But it's got to be something that's meaningful. So can you tell me how you deal with promotions in your company? What's the normal process for that? And are there opportunities from this position to move on in your company? That, you know, 2 different questions, kind of how is it done, and then are there opportunities? Do you provide professional development, and if so, what would that look like, right, from within your
Okay, right.
organization?
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of a safe one, because it shows your interest and it shows you're
Okay.
wanting to
Yeah.
improve. But at the same time, if they don't, that's okay. It's not the end of the world if they say, "No, we don't provide any professional development."
Right.
So
Right. I've had questions or asked questions in the past. I've asked, what do you like about working at this company? And you know, I've kind of put them on the spot a little bit to where they've had
Good.
to, give an answer that wasn't canned, you might
right.
say, right?
Yes. Good one.
I've asked
Mhm.
if you could change something about the company, what would you change?
Yes.
Because everybody thinks, oh, their company's so great, but a lot of times, there are some things that could be changed, except they don't really know exactly what it is at the time. But
Yes.
when you think about it, hey, that comes to mind. I want to change that. I want to change that. Right?
That's really good, Brent. Really good thinking. And again, you're not going to think of that off the cuff if you haven't prepared for an
Yeah.
interview, right?
Yeah.
So you really want to take the time and make a little agenda for yourself, and what are the questions. And I mean, people should be going through 10 to 30, 40 questions, and how would I answer that, and not just, oh yeah, I'd talk about this. No, kind of write out your answer. And remember that once you've written out one response to tell us about yourself,
Yeah.
then you can use that for every other
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah, true,
so it's
true.
it's not work for every interview
Right.
like that. It's just when you're in that job search and you're wanting to do interviews, then start getting some of this information down.
Right. And we have to tailor resumes to jobs. We have to tailor interviews or what questions we might ask too. We might think, okay, this company, what question would they ask me, and then kind of tailor our responses and how we prepare for it to
That's
that
right.
is a good idea too.
That's
It's probably
right.
a good idea as well to, if you're going to ask questions to employers, like have a question, had 10 or 12 of them that you're going to ask, and maybe cycle between those.
Right,
From
because you
those,
would
right?
only want to probably ask 3
Yeah, 3
Right.
is, yeah.
at the end of your interview. I have 3 questions I'd like to ask. The first one is, so you want to make sure that they're good, well thought of questions, and they're not just, and don't ask, how much are you going to pay me? Don't ask that question, right?
That's not a good question.
No, not a good question, because often that information is then negotiated, right? They may bring it up. If they bring it up, so an employer may say, all right, we can offer you anywhere between $23 and $26 an hour, right?
Yeah.
Or $15 and $19 an hour. Where do you think you should fit in that scale?
Yeah.
So then you've got to be able to justify, right?
Yeah.
So someone with no experience, never done the job, has almost no skill experience at all, and saying, well, I'm quite willing to start at 15. Can you tell me when and how I would be able to get?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
then you can
Yeah.
bring in some questions about how can I, do I get is there a wage increase after
Right.
the probationary period, or after a year, or how does that work, right?
Right.
So
It's never a good idea to sell yourself short either,
no,
right?
no,
You know what you're worth and what your skills are worth,
right.
and you're worth $25 an hour, and say, well, I'll work for 18.
Yeah.
Then the employer goes, oh, okay, they must not have
Mhm.
much confidence in their
Mhm.
work, right? And so there can be both ends of the scale there too.
Right, so if you feel you're on the upper end of the scale, don't be afraid to say, from my experience and my education, I feel that I should be on the upper end of that scale. So you don't have to exactly say, oh, I'm going to work for, if it was between $20 and $25, I want 25. You can say, I feel I should be on the upper end of that
Yeah.
scale, right? It still gives the employer the last,
Okay.
sort
Yeah.
of offer. And don't forget that a job offer is only an offer, and that can be negotiated.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and that's a good point too, right? And you can, you have a wage range, let's say between 35 and 55. You give them that, and there's leeway in there. But let's say they offer you, okay, well, we can't, go to your wage. We can't offer you $25 an hour. So you can come back with, well, can you offer this? Maybe an extra week of holidays or something.
Exactly.
And negotiate that way. Oftentimes we feel we can't negotiate, but you said
You certainly
you
can.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And you need to do that in a way that you have to, sort of understand the person that's making that. How can you talk to them? You have to be a really good reader of character there, right?
True enough.
So, are you going to provide moving expenses? No moving expenses. So
right.
if they're not going to provide moving expenses, well, then I feel I should get another so much
So much
monetary.
more money,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
right.
Oh, that makes sense.
So,
yeah. So all of that with the resumes and with the interviews is selling ourselves. What is the best way to sell yourself on an interview? It's, having confidence and stuff
Yes.
in ourselves, and that it takes a little bit to have confidence, right? We might be an older person looking for work and that. But what advice could you give to people, going into an interview to nail it?
Right.
So that they can nail that interview every time.
So preparedness, absolutely. Know what your strengths are. So another question employers will ask, well, what are your top strengths or what are your top weaknesses? So go through, make a list. Again, it comes to that skills. So, are you good at building relationships and keeping business? Or no matter, I mean, you could be so in my job, I still have to be a relationship builder, even though
Right.
I'm not in sales or anything like
Right.
that. So I can gain and maintain clients, right? Like
Right.
I can guarantee you that. I know that. But you only want to go to 3 because so you want to have the list. You want to know what they are.
Right.
But in an interview, it's sort of a 3-finger rule. If you're giving any feedback on anything, it's sort of like give 3. You could say I could provide more, but I'll give you my top 3.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, that makes sense.
So,
yeah.
and it's helpful to, be able to just, really prepare for what you think the top 3 are. And then for the weakness too. So that is, again, a really important interview question that's almost always asked.
Always
right?
asked.
Yeah. And that is
Yeah.
pick something that is a weakness, but you've already learned how to manage it.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
I don't say no to things very easily. So now when I'm asked to do different tasks, I check how much time is involved and then make my decision before I answer right away that I'll do something, right? So it's like giving what the weakness is, all right? This is what I've done to manage it, right? So that now it actually shines through a little bit as a strength. So you don't want to
Okay.
say, yeah, paper,
Okay.
I'm not good with computers.
Yeah.
No, So I don't have a lot of computer experience, but I've been doing some work on some online programs. I feel that I've gotten better and I'm really eager to learn.
Yeah.
Really eager to learn
I
what
think-
you don't know.
Yeah, I think adding that, I'm eager to learn, which
Mm-hmm.
makes you teachable to that employer.
Absolutely.
And that's a lot of what they're looking
Absolutely.
for is teachableness, because
Yes.
you get a lot of people coming in and they know everything, or they think they know everything,
Mhm.
and then they can't teach how that company does things, and that will disqualify you. Whether you're qualified for the job or not will disqualify you
Right.
on being
Right.
teachable, right?
That's right. And so when you get hired, let's say now you're hired, you want to take the first 6 months to learn that job and just be absorbing everything. So some people will even say, don't tell me how to change anything till you've been on the job for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Learn the job, learn what it's done. And if you can see a way that it can be improved, then make notes on that and how it can be improved and really think
Okay.
it through, right?
Yeah, that's a
Because
good
if you
point,
come
yeah.
in right away and, oh yeah, well, we did this at my old workplace and one time I did this at my workplace, then it's like, no, it's sort of a backwards way of putting the
Yeah.
employer's procedures down, right? So
Okay.
you want to do that. You want to say, oh, okay, I can do it like that, knowing in your head, yeah, but I could see an easier way of doing it. Just don't say that right away.
Mhm.
And 6 months is just a rule of thumb. It may be something that you could see needs to be changed relatively quickly. Like
Okay.
certain policies or procedures, if they don't have a fire procedure or whatever, you could, say after a month or so, I noticed that you don't have a first aid person. I have my first aid. I could do that for you, right? It's sort of an
Yeah.
offer, right, or something. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there's a lot of companies that don't have safety procedures either, which is kind of a complicated process, but there's nobody, whether they don't want to step up to the plate and run the meetings and set up a committee and stuff. So, doing that, and having that in your mind where, hey, maybe I can set that up, and thinking
Right.
that way would be good.
That's
It
right.
shows proactiveness on your part,
That's right.
and that too, right? So
That's right.
great, yeah. So resumes, interviews. So you have the resume in place,
Mm-hmm.
but looking for a job, where do people look for
Yes.
jobs?
Right.
There's job boards and everything like that.
That's
but
right.
is that the best place?
No.
No.
So by the time a job is posted, you're now competing with 80% of the people that are job searching.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So if you're just waiting for the job to become posted, that's not a good use of your time. Everybody can do that, and everybody is doing that. So now you're in a big competition. You want to fit in prior to that job getting posted if you can. That's about networking. So now you've got to get out. You go to employers. You make a list every week. Who am I going to go see? They don't have to have a job posting, but I'd like to work in a real estate office, right? So now you're going to go around and you're going to visit every real estate office. You're going to, if you've got a calling card versus a resume, or if you want to, you take your resume and, I'm really interested in your job. Could you tell me a little bit about it? Just a couple of questions I have, and just let me know a little bit about it. And I'm looking for work, exactly what you're doing, or, something related. And do you know of anybody who's interested? So 2 things: network, and you can network by doing what we call cold calls, not necessarily phone calls, but walk-ins. Some employers, we do everything online. So when you start to hear that at a company, then you want to go back and you want to say, is there any way I can speak to or have a short informational interview? So it's not necessarily about me trying to beg for a job at this opportunity or with this interview. You could say, I'm in a job search and I'm trying to find the right company that fits with my skills.
Okay. Yeah,
right? So you turn the table a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you're saying, okay, I'm looking for the company where I'm going to be a good fit. So, but you let people know that. And then they're like, oh, yeah. Like, so it's a bit of so how you change the table in the interview on those last few questions. So tell me what you like about the job. Now you're doing the same thing. I'm looking for a good company. I've looked your company up and I like a number of pieces that you do, and these are them, and I'm just wondering if I could have a short informational interview about, moving into this type of work.
Nice.
So yeah, that would be good.
Okay. You are listening and watching Feel the Beat with DJ B live on Jess FM radio and TV. We appreciate you tuning in with my in-studio guest, Geraldine LaRue from Teamworks Training here in Lethbridge at the Lethbridge Centre Mall. We appreciate her coming in today. We'll spend a little bit more time with her here shortly until about 4:30. You're able to stay, right? Okay, so we'll find a little bit more information, but we want to thank you for tuning in. And please download the app on Jess FM app on iTunes or iStore, I guess it is. I'm not an Apple user, so iStore or on Play Store for your smartphone. Download that app and you'll be able to tune in live to radio, listen to great music, great shows, and you'll be able to watch TV on that as well. So you'll be able to click onto the link, go to our TV programs, watch our in-studio live guests. You'll be able to watch movies when we don't have a live guest in studio. So some great things happening. I'm DJ B, and this program's Feel the Beat. I usually have music and stuff, and I'll be playing some music a little bit later on. I'll run a little bit into 5 o'clock, my show goes to, so I'll be playing some music till then when Geraldine has to leave. But I'll try and gear it around working music, something that can pump us up for that job search, because it is difficult finding a job out there. It's very hard. But remember, it's job seeking, not job waiting. So we have to actually make the effort and do the labor and work to work, because like you said, it's a full-time job unto itself. So, you might not have work, but you still have work, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of time preparing, and don't get bogged down in that preparing either. Like, sometimes you just got to get out there. You just got to go and talk to people and try to see if you can get in and, like I said, do an informational interview. Even if your resume isn't 100% yet, if you get stalled waiting for the perfect resume and waiting for all the perfect answers for your interview, you're going to be stalled for a long time. So remember, it's a work in progress, and every time that you interact with an employer is a time you're going to learn something. Go to events where employers are, absolutely, career fairs, right? Another thing that we should talk about are the new applicant tracking systems.
Okay.
So the ATS systems, that's where they say download your resume online, download your cover letter online. So you really have to read the job description very well if there is a job description that asks you to download your resume and cover letter. What happens in those applicant tracking systems, as soon as you download your electronic document, it's pulled apart into pieces. based on the words that you're using that match the job description. So if you use none of the words that are matching the job description, your resume's gone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got to use the language that's in the job description in some way. So they may say you must have a Class 5 driver's license, you have to have a high school diploma, and you need to have 3 years experience. You have to say those 3 things somewhere within that. If they're asking for the cover letter and a resume, then it could be in the cover letter or the resume.
Mhm.
If they're asking only a resume, then it has to be in the resume.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because it's not, that resume is not going to look exactly like you are presenting it when
Mhm.
when those
Okay.
systems take it apart.
Okay.
And that brings us to another thing. We like to pretty up our resumes. None of those generally work very well in an applicant tracking system.
Oh,
A
wow.
single,
Okay.
very plain white, black kind of document
Okay.
without
Okay.
color.
No
and-
flowers.
Yeah, yeah, not a lot
Yeah,
of
smiley faces
yeah,
on it or something.
banners and
Okay.
things like
Makes
that.
sense. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, when you're handing in a resume, so I just looked at a resume recently from a graphic designer, and it was really nice. Now, from a graphic designer, I would expect to see a fairly good resume, right? Like a nice looking document. But if she has to put that just online, like or in an applicant
Yeah.
tracking system, that's not going to come through.
Right.
So it depends. We still have employers that say drop your resume off.
Yeah.
So, and small businesses will do that more than large businesses.
Mhm.
Large businesses now are almost all download your resumes.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so if you're not getting anything happening and you think you are an absolute great fit, you may want to see if you can connect with someone about why wasn't your resume picked up, or what was there something that you didn't include in there that you want to ask an employer, why didn't I get an interview,
Mhm.
if they have any time, and especially if you've had an interview, can you give me any feedback on, that's a good last question.
Uh-huh.
Can I get feedback on this interview when we're
Okay.
done, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, those applicant tracking systems are changing how we job
Oh,
seek
okay.
a
Oh,
little
wow.
bit too.
Okay. Ah, interesting.
Mhm.
That's good to know.
Yeah. But it's all
Wow.
about connecting, right?
Yeah.
And especially in southern Alberta.
Okay.
It's about who you know. So if you don't know very many people, volunteer somewhere, right? Get out, get to events, talk to people. You have to be, even if you're an introvert, then go at the beginning of things so there's not a lot of people, but you can connect with a few,
Uh-huh.
right? You want to be able to get and be able to start up conversation with someone. So,
Okay.
hi, I'm so and so, and
Right.
just how are you connecting with them in some
Right.
way? I haven't lived here long. Can you tell me something
Right.
about the community, right?
Yeah.
Just have one line, and as long as you can ask a question that makes somebody else
Ah,
answer.
yeah.
The more
Exactly.
questions you have, the more they do the talking.
Okay. Well, that
So
makes
it's
sense.
a little bit of a way that sometimes if you're a bit of an introvert, that's a way to cope, is ask questions, and then somebody else is doing more of the talking.
Okay. Nice. So the importance of networking.
Yes.
Because
huge.
networking can lead to somebody, maybe
Mhm,
somebody's
mhm.
grandpa or dad or something
Mhm.
has a business, and by networking,
Mhm.
oh, I know this person that's
Mhm.
looking, and bang, you get the job.
Well, one of our mutual friends did 25
Yeah,
informational or interviews, 25. And the position that she eventually got came from one of those informational interviews. They said, oh, we remembered you were in, and we now know of a client that's looking for an accountant, a bookkeeper, that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
So it was really interesting of how, so don't be discouraged if you've gone through, and only had like 4 or 5 interviews. That's nothing yet, right? Like,
Okay.
don't be discouraged by that at all. But getting a job is also a numbers game. So unless you're getting out there and you're connecting with people, then how are you going to get those opportunities?
Mhm.
So it's all about making the connections. Set a goal. Is it 10 a week? Yes, we can easily send out 5 resumes online, right, to all those applicant tracking
okay,
system, right?
okay.
That's not difficult to do, although you're tweaking them and everything. But it's, what am I going to do for those networking, face-to-face connections?
Yeah.
How many
okay.
of those am
Oh,
I
wow.
going to do?
Okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. That's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, this has been very informative, Geraldine. Resumes and interviews and selling ourselves, and that's important. That's what we all need to do. We all need to work and get a job, and it can be very daunting sometimes, right?
Yes.
So remembering all these things is key. That's what we need to do is prepare, though. Prepare what what we're going to say, how we're going to answer questions. Prepare. That's something that we can't stress enough
Exactly.
is prepare. And no matter what you
Exactly.
do, you have to prepare, right? But preparing for interviews so that we look like we kind of know what we're talking about, or we know about ourselves, because we know the situations, we know our experience, we know what we've
Great.
been through, so we just need to get that formulated into our mind. So great. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you
You're
again
welcome.
for coming in.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that very much. And you're off to a swim meet, you said?
Well, yeah, my daughter's
Your
in swimming.
daughter's
We have the
in swimming,
final
yeah.
swim activity
Oh,
of
nice.
the year. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Where's that at?
We're just having a little picnic down
Oh,
at
okay.
the River Valley.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
And the
it's
swim
always
meet's the
fun.
weekend.
Is it on the
yeah.
weekend? Okay. Is that at
Medicine Hat.
Medicine Hat?
actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
cool.
Southern
Right on.
Alberta Provincial. So yeah, we'll be. Mom has to work and daughter has to swim, and Dad's taking care of both of us. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's really good. So hope you have fun at that. Thank you for coming in again last minute today. It was a little bit of a whirlwind there, but
That
I
was
appreciate
okay. We
that
got it
very
done.
much for bailing me out on the interview there. That's awesome. So I want to thank you for watching Jess FM TV today and listening on the radio. Jess FM, this is Feel the Beat with DJ B. Gonna have some music for you until about 5 o'clock. We thank you for always watching, tuning in on the internet, jessfm.ca. Also want to thank you for listening and watching on our website and downloading the app. Make sure you have, if you haven't yet, downloaded that app. It's great. You'll be able to watch us and listen to us wherever you are, and we got a lot of great programming now, and we're constantly adding to that, so a lot more coming up as well. So thank you again, Geraldine, and appreciate you coming in, and we'll go back to our movie now on Jess TV, which was, I believe, We're the Millers. So we'll be returning back to that right away here.